Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Damien Beatdown Brown, former UFC fighter and promoter of Beatdown Promotions. They just recently had Beatdown Promotions 6 at Eden's Hill Hotel in Queensland on March 9th. I've done a recap for that. Check that out if you like, or hit up beatdownpromotions.com.au to find out more there. I got him on. We also chat about their history making, their landmark show that they're bringing to Townsville. It's going to be the Townsville Entertainment and Convention Centre. They're looking to sell about 2,000 tickets on May 11th. So, of course, want to promote any Australian MMA branching out. So if you want to find out more about that, stick around. And also, very interesting chat as well. We spent a lot of time on like fighter pay, and Damien Brown, like a wealth of knowledge. Like I said, he's fought in the UFC, he's fought in Rizin. He talks about how to get to the UFC, how you should ask for money if you're an up-and-coming fighter, how you can get more, how you can know your worth when negotiating. And he's a very smart man. I mean, he's got multiple gyms, promotions, businesses. He's a genius. So stick around. Friend of the show, this is. Please, without further ado, Damien Beatdown Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. The busiest man in Australian MMA, Damien Beatdown Brown, who looks like you're in between meetings.
I'm in between everything. I just turn my aircon off. It's freezing. You wouldn't believe it in Queensland, hey? I'm in between everything today. I straight off the event on the weekend, and we headed to Townsville yesterday. So yeah, just trying to wrap up the event from the weekend. I like to try and get everyone paid nice and quick and sort it out. So I'll get to close off one chapter and start the next.
Are you still old school, money in an envelope at the night? Here you go.
Nah, man. I run a business. I run a business properly, and it's I do my best to make sure that everything's above board, and yeah, I think like if you're not doing it that way, then you sort of don't really know where you're at. So that's how I like to do it.
Is there I mean, how do you know how well you did off a show? I know, you're a businessman, so profit is obviously important to some degree, at least to grow the events. Do you is there a certain number you know you need to hit after each event, and are you hitting them?
I think like anything in business, it's not really. I think initially it's not about profit. It's about not losing money. And I think with MMA, for the most part, it's like that as well. And I'm like that in business in general. I think money comes in the long run, but it's about getting there. Like if you're trying to make money off the first show, you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. It's pretty rare that you open a business in any industry and you make money in the first week. It takes you 1 or 2 years to get to that point. So I'd like to say I run it like a business. It's obviously a passion, but passions are useless if they're not making money. So, I have a long-term goal, but, in the short term, it's just making sure that we don't lose money, and we put on good quality events, good streams, and, we look after the athletes. And, for me at this point, if they're happy and the fans are happy, then I think and we're not losing money, then we're doing something right. And then we'll just see where that pans out over the future.
What's your thoughts when you hear people? Because I hear it a lot as well, like from people in the sport and out of the sport, when they're like, "Oh, there's no money in mixed martial arts. There's no money in Australian MMA."
Well, I mean, if you don't know how to run a business, there's no money in any business, right? It is what it is. Some people are just not built for it. The idea that there's no money is like a very short-sighted thought process. It's like people will tell you, like, I got told there was no money in gyms. I literally remember leaving my job when it was my last shift, and a guy that used to own a gym said to me, "There's no money in gyms. I'll see you back here soon." And I fucking watched this space. I think there's people who sell all sorts of shit and make money. You just got to have like the right, I guess, vision, and you have to be intelligent with the way you approach things. I think like just throwing money around left, right, and center and doing silly stuff will bring you undone. But look, you're not getting rich off Australian MMA, but there's no reason why you can't run an event and make a little bit of a few bob on top, you know what I mean?
Is there a plan? I mean, I know you're like a silently competitive guy in the promotions and whatnot, but like, do you know if TV deals are ever in the horizon?
Yep.
Cool.
I'm a very
Spit.
competitive guy, I grew up playing sport. I've been in the military. Um, you know, I've uh I've done everything. I've been, in the UFC. Like I'm competitive with everything I do, but I'll clap for my competitor. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to hate anyone to fight them. I don't have to hate my competition. I fucking I love watching people succeed, even if they're down the road from me.
With the like you've got to I like your streaming model, of course. It's, subscribe to the YouTube channel and then you get like 5 hours of fights. It's great as a fan. Now I can only imagine that there is a grand plan eventually to move to some form of pay-per-view or bigger. Is there, or is it, are you going to keep it on YouTube forever?
I don't know. I don't really set out to be like, this is what I want to do. I just wanted to run a fight show to help a few people out, and then probably said a few things I couldn't back out. So fucking here we are. It would make a lot of sense to get a broadcasting deal. Um, but I don't really intend on not having it on YouTube until that happens. I think it'll always be on YouTube. Considered, putting a paywall on the pro component of the card. Um, but I don't know that I'll ever charge for amateurs. I mean, I kind of feel like they're fighting for free, so you know, I don't really feel like it's maybe like a good thing to do for myself. Again, whatever, if someone else wants to do it. But I think that I think that I've considered putting a paywall on the pro fights. I don't know whether it's worth it. Um, doesn't seem like a lot of people make a lot of money off doing that, but yeah, a broadcasting deal at some point down the track, whatever that looks like on whatever platform, I think would be a smart business decision.
Do you share secrets with other promoters? Like, how do you, because obviously you've been around, you've seen the big promotions, but in terms of like the Australian MMA promotions, I mean, how do you know? Is it just because you've fought on others and you go, okay, well, now I'm a promoter, I got to kind of envision what I want to do differently? Or how are you planning your shows?
I would say I take my experience and my budget, and I try to make the best quality event I can inside of what we can afford. Um, and yeah, I've been on the big shows like UFC and whatnot, but I've also been on Cage Warriors, which it's a massive event, but it's I don't think they go sort of over the top like the UFC do, like with their production, but they run a great event. They meet the UFC Fight Pass expectations. They've been on that for a long time. So there's events like that I would say you've got like lower level events domestically. Then you've probably got like the LFA type event in America and Cage Warriors. You got those events sort of like mid range, and then you've got like your PFL, Bellator, and whatnot above that. I sort of go with like what the guys in the middle are doing, and that's a good expectation or level for me to increase where I'm at and move it up from there. So that's kind of what I focus on, and the rest. I mean, if I was to sit here and say it publicly, like most of my IP is my mind. It's like the way I think, the things that I that I envision and what I think MMA is missing in general, sharing all that information is giving away what I do.
Now, with the card on the weekend, what were your thoughts? Do you rank a card out of 10 in terms of like, because you're not in control of the action, but in terms of behind the scenes, production, broadcast, all that sort of stuff, how do you sort of rank out of 10 that show?
Man, I wouldn't really fault it. I thought that the fights lived up to the expectations. um, I think our production quality again was the same, if not better than it was the last event. I really think in general that we did an amazing job, and I think the team that was behind me killed it. We had a same day setup. Um, so yeah, it was overall it was a pretty good event, and I'm really happy with it. The fights were unreal. Kepu Stoddart was what I thought it was going to be. I honestly think those guys fought 10 times. They could knock each other out 5 times each. Jamie Spawn, Jack James, when I made that fight, it was very much, I know the striking capabilities of both guys because like I've cornered and trained with Jack and I've coached and trained with Jamie. They're both really good on the feet. Like the few people that was surprised by what was going on the feet, they sort of the aircon's still on here and the button didn't work for some reason. The few people that were surprised by how things went, I think just didn't understand the striking capability of both guys. And I think that's all anyone would have been surprised about, but I wasn't. I thought that it would have been, a chess match, and Jamie's got good striking, and he had a really good first round, and the second and third sort of swung Jack's way, and that's kind of what I guess, what I expected sort of might have happened, but I thought they would have cancelled each other out, and we would have got a chess match, which is exactly what it was. So I think overall, all the fights were the same, as though I probably thought they would turn out. Stewart Nicoll, I don't really know what's next for the guy. I mean, there are plenty. I could bring internationals in. We tried to bring a guy in that had fought at Dallas for that was 45-6, and he was like a bit of a nightmare to deal with. But we tried to get him in. I still think Stewart would have beaten him in like 1 or 2 rounds. But I think he's that good. But the guy was 6-0 with 6 first round KOs, and I watched him in the cage warming up, moving around during the day, and he was fast, and Stu didn't exactly have the easiest time getting into the ground. Like even when he got hold of him, he managed to get back to his feet a lot. It was only when he finally gave up his back, Stu was able to flatten him out. But I think he probably gave him as good as anyone's going to give him, at least domestically. I think if he's not signed with the UFC, I'd be super surprised.
Stewart Nicoll's an interesting one because I really do think he's, number one flyweight, but I think it's hard because I even said in my little recap.
Well, he is a number one flyweight.
Well, I'm so invested in the sport domestically, but it's so hard when the internationals come in because it's hard to sort of explain to everyone how good the guy is that comes in. And I think that's because
the assumption is that you're bringing someone in to lose.
Exactly. And I think because that has been done in the past previously, not at your shows, but in others.
It's been happening for years.
So it is unfortunate. I think that's why I lean so heavily on, the Drillich matchup or the Gauchi matchup with Stewie Nicoll. But could he get signed tomorrow? I mean, you're a guy that's been to the UFC.
No, when's the next Aussie card?
Well, they reckon August, Perth.
So he's probably got Contender before that. August, Perth, Contender Series is June, I think. Look, I don't manage him. He's got a manager. So whatever they have got going on, I would imagine that they would be planning a Contender Series type situation. Do I think he needs it? No, I think he's good enough to be signed. But the UFC's always been pretty open about their sort of feelings on the flyweight division. I mean, arguably the GOAT, they they traded fucking Demetrius Johnson to one championship, you know what I mean, for Ben Askren, who fucking retired 3 fights later. So I don't know, what their intention is with the flyweight division and whether signing a prospect is something that they're sort of focused on. Um, but like even Jack Della, I mean, I think it was like 10-2, 10-1,
Yeah.
or something when he signed. Like that's 12 fights at welterweight. I mean, if they're not real focused on the flyweight division, maybe he's got to fight 3 or 4 times. Like who knows? I don't know, man. I feel like the UFC is fucking hard to get into, and it's very much an opportunistic type situation. I had a conversation with someone the other day. I think from memory, the last person that got signed directly to the UFC without an opportunity presented to them, so signed as a prospect to the company and then given a fight at a later date, was Taito Ivasa. That was 2016.
Yeah. No,
I think he was the
yeah.
last potential prospect signed without a fight. Most of the time, it's an opportunity's there. Take like even Volk. Volk signed with the UFC on 5 weeks' notice to fight in Singapore. So it's usually an opportunity comes up. They need to fill a spot. Bam. They feel like it's pretty rare that like a prospect's actually signed to that organization. Either that or they build the hype with the Contender Series fight, which again they sign you to the Contender Series and then match you up. So that's still signing a prospect, but it's as far as just getting signed because the company's like, I see the value in that guy. I just don't think it happens very often. So I think basically probably August. I think his managers probably will keep him on the shelf until then. He's on an 8-fight win streak with 7 finishes. That makes sense. And if they don't, they'll probably get him in a Contender Series.
Do you think the UFC cares whether he's fighting guys that come in from Japan or whether he's fighting other Australian flyweights? Like, I talk a lot about the Drillich and the Gauchi matchups and all that sort of
The
stuff.
UFC only care that he's fighting people with winning records. That's all they care about, and they don't exist in Australia. Drillich and Gauchi are the only two guys in Australia that have a decent winning record, and I mean like a 75-80% win ratio. Like you got to have won 75 to 80% of your fights for the UFC to look and go, that's a formidable opponent. So that, and I know that because I had that conversation. So they want you to fight people who have winning records, particularly in your last 6 fights. Like if you're on debut and you fight another debut guy, whatever. But if you're like 7-0 and you find a guy that's fucking 2-6, like they're not going to be like, oh, that guy's awesome. They want you fighting guys that are like 8-1, 10-1, 10-2, 6-0. So the UFC do care, and I think I'm not going to say it's directly related to, but I would say it had something to do with it. There was a fight show called maybe like Explosion or some shit in America, and they had like guys with fucking 13-0 records, but their opponents were like 5-100. You know what I mean? And what happened was they signed 3 or 4 guys to the UFC, and there was some media outlets that exposed the records of the opponents. And then those guys went on and got smashed in the UFC. So they were building guys up and then signing them. And I have noticed ever since that it's never really happened again. And again, I'm not saying it's directly related, but it was on like every media outlet. Like it was very highlighted at the time. And so I think they want guys that have tested themselves already and faced, like I said, formidable opponents that sort of legitimizes the promotional case of that person. So when you sign someone, you want to advertise them, you want to make sure that when people go through and expose the records of their opponents, you don't look like a dickhead for signing them. And that's kind of like, I think that's kind of what they want. They just want you to face the right people. Now you can do that by facing stylistically the right people with great records, but and avoiding the hard ones. But you know, you just can't be fighting guys that don't have good records if the UFC is your goal. And so I think, Gauchi and Drillich are probably, and I could be wrong because I'd have to look it up, but I'd say they're probably two of the only flyweights in the country that have had the same or more fights than Stu that have a decent record.
Yeah, it's roughly along
Or
those
Cooper,
lines. Yeah, but
Cooper
he's kind of
signed to one.
yeah, he's kind of off now, doing his own thing. But so do you think, they look at the record, but they don't go down the rabbit hole of, okay, he fought Drillich. Okay, then we look at Drillich, we look at his record. Okay, he fought those guys. You think the UFC just looks at their record, looks at kind of the records
No,
of the
so
guys?
they'll look at Stu, they'll go, oh, he's 8-0. And then they might look at the last guy that he fought who's 6-0. And then they'll look at that guy's opponents and go, was the 6-0 legitimate? Or, yeah, he beat this guy, but this guy's fought people who are 5-7, or 5-70 in total of 6 opponents or something. So they know that he fought an opponent with a bad record. So they'll make sure that they don't expose themselves that way. But I think for the most part, as long as you're fighting people with decent records and you just keep fighting, you're going to get there. Again, I'll double down on it. I think he's the best flyweight in the country by a fucking country mile. And I think when the opportunity comes up, he's the one that gets signed and he will be successful in the UFC at flyweight.
Well, asking you that then as a coach and say promoter, when you're in a spot like, and I mentioned the Max Kelly versus Matt Kindness fight, where it was like if either one of them lost, they could have been. I think Max could have been 1-3 if he lost, and Kindness has now gone to 0-2. Good fighters. Is it then hard as a coach / promoter to match them up because they're tough fights with not an appealing record?
Not really. I mean, Jordan Gamble and Matt Kindness are both 0-2. That'd be a nice fight. Max Kelly's 2-2. There's other guys out there that are 2-2. You just gotta find the right guys to sort of sway. Like, Max fighting an 0-2 guy now would be dumb. Like, it doesn't help the 0-2 guy, and it doesn't help Max. He's 2-2, so like, I think a smart fight now is to fight someone else that's had the same amount of fights with a similar sort of record, or fight someone who's 1-0 or 2-0, something like that, and then that's how you sort of start to build from there. And I think someone like Matt Kindness probably needs to find someone that doesn't have a win as well. So yeah, I think there's definitely ways to keep doing it. I think like the biggest problem is, and particularly I'm talking Australia, not anywhere else, is, and it's probably the same everywhere else, but in like a regional type sense, is someone like Jack James, for example, who he doesn't have 3 or 4 fights. He now has 7. So I think if you have between 5 and 10 fights, that's where you're either going to fight someone with less fights or you're going to fight someone with way more. I think that's the hardest fights to make, is the guys that are bang in the middle of like not enough experience or too experienced.
When you were coming up as a fighter coach, whatever it is, were there guys out there that were quality dudes, but unfortunately, like their record started at 0-3 and they kind of never got enough of a run type thing?
When I first started, I don't know really. I mean, I think what happened probably when I first started, there's a lot of people that were just strikers or just grapplers, and they probably didn't focus on the whole game. Like the sport's its own thing now. Yeah, MMA used to be like, mixed martial arts. You get a taekwondo guy fighting a jiu-jitsu guy. You're like, oh fuck, what's going to happen here? Now everyone's trains MMA. So, if someone goes 0-3 now, it's pretty hard to like, have a specialist sort of area to fall back on. Whereas back in the day, when guys were going 0-3, they were like, oh fuck it, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. Like they just destroy like Thai boxer or something. They're just like, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. I'll just strike with people. Um, and so I think yeah, there was a few. Um, I think Curtis Aguirre, he owns a Thai boxing gym now. He had some MMA fights, and he's a good fighter, you know. But I, I still remember him getting super angry because people would take him down, you know. And I think if he did a bit of jiu-jitsu, like he might have been a force in MMA, but he just didn't like it. You know, he likes Thai boxing. Um, and so he was definitely like one of the guys that, he was tough. You know, he had good striking, had a good chin on him. He's a big guy. I think he fought like maybe middleweight or something, like that, light heavyweight. Um, but I think you just didn't get away with not having part of your game back then. It was like you really would get exposed if you were one dimensional. And he went away from the sport because he didn't want to grapple, as far as I know. Um, but he was good, and just ended up on the wrong end of a few wins and losses. So, but off the top of my head, not a lot, but that's just one I remember. But I think the sport's much more well rounded now. Um, and it's definitely hard to come back from like an 0-3 type record, but it's not impossible. I made the UFC, man. I was 10-8 at one stage.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
it just depends on how long you want to hold on for.
it's like that's what I kind of wanted to ask you about, even with your record coming up. Were there any fights that you ever took where you were like, this one's kind of just not to pad your record, but this one's to help my record look better? Were there any fights like that you took?
I never took fights to make my record look better. I took fights to get fights, so I would price myself. I think the biggest. This is like a whole nother interview. I could fucking talk about this for ages, but I give this advice to these people. If you think that domestic promoters are going to pay your worth, then you'll probably get no fights. Right? Your value is based on who's standing across the cage from you, not what you're worth. Like, if I went and fought right now and someone wanted me to fight, I don't know, who's a fucking top guy? Say someone wanted me to fight Kit Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 15 grand. You know what I mean? But you want me to fight like Abel Brights, and then I'll fight that dude for like 2 grand. So it's like, not right now, I mean, but like I'm talking about like Abel's kind of at the end of his career. He's sort of taking fights. Like, fuck, he just fought Darcy Bendy at middleweight. What was going on there? And then you got Kit Campbell who's just beating Matt Vale. He's looking pretty good. He's probably getting better with age. Good team or something around him, whatever he's doing. I don't think me going, hey guys, I've been in the UFC and this is what I'm worth is ever going to get me fights. Because if I felt like that, I'd want 15 to fight everyone.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, back like in 2015, that's pretty much what I did. I just said, hey, like if the guy standing across from me has this many fights, fight for this. And so, the more experience they got, the more money you want. And I think it's a reasonable expectation. And that puts the promoter in a position where he can either find you the right fight or pay you more money or whatever it's going to be. And I think it makes you easy to work with from a promoter's point of view. Like, if you're like, and I'll just fight anyone, just pay me accordingly, my value then becomes who's standing across from me. So I never picked and chose, and I never said no to opponents. Not once in my career have I said no to anyone. And so I think that people just value themselves wrong. I think they think that they are the value, but you're not. Domestically, the value is what's standing across from you. So I think that's where you set the price.
When you have fighters, have you ever had them go, like as a promoter, have you ever had them go, I say, oh, I want $600, and you're like, no, mate, you're worth more. Like, have you ever had to sort of give them more, or does the businessman and you take over?
No, I almost just have set prices. Someone comes to me and says, oh, I'm pro debut. Like, sweet, I'll give you this much. 2-3 fights in, I'll give you this much. And I pretty much just offer the same price. I don't really care who the person is. I sort of just look at their record and go, oh, yep, I think that, and I don't try to, I'm not like I've never paid anyone less than $750. Um, Fuck, my first fight was 250. So I think, it's, I think you just sort of look at them and if you keep like the price that you pay guys, you keep it the same across the board, and not just try to get people cheaper, then I think it definitely makes things a little bit easier. Um, the ones that are a bit harder is like I don't know, say like like just as an example, say like Brent Mumford, right? I don't think he's fighting anymore, but like I know that he used to sell like shit tons of tickets, and he used to get paid pretty well to fight on Eternal. Say someone like that came to me and wanted to fight. They're the ones that probably for a new promoter or promotion that otherwise hasn't promoted him. They're the ones that would be tricky because you're like, I don't even know what to offer this guy. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I think they're the ones that get a bit harder, and that's more like your top three fights. But other than that, I think pretty much most promotions in the country are probably on the same page without talking to each other. Probably all offering the same thing. Um, and yeah, I think again, if you're on debut and you find a guy that's had 5 fights, you still should be asking for 2 grand.
Yeah.
If you're on debut and you find a guy that's on debut, you probably should ask him for $750. I think the same. I think it. I still think that that's the as a professional fighter in Australia, I still think that's the best model to be easy to deal with for promoters, to get the right opponents, or at least to get the right offers, and to fight regularly. So to do those 3 things, to be easy to deal with, to do business with, to get the right fight offers. So that's like to not get stitched up or to not pad your record, but just get a decent offer, and to fight regularly. So like if you want 3, 4, 5, 10 grand a fight, you just won't get fights. Like it's just you gotta wait for the right opportunity or something to come up. If you just price yourself right and fight who they put in front of you, then you fight 5, 6 times a year. And I mean, I used to fight 6 times a year, but yeah, I don't know. Everyone's different, and we all have a different career trajectory. Some people are 20 these days, and some people are 35. And fuck, if you're 35, you're not going to fight for $1,000 just to get a fight because it's kind of like you're at the end of your career or whatever, like I was. So, so yeah, I think that's probably not that's like my athlete advice would be that.
So tell us about Townsville, because Beatdown Promotions 6 out and away. Were you straight on a plane straight to Townsville?
Yeah, I went up there yesterday. I was, man. I'm busy, but I'm finger on the pulse. I don't slow down, and I don't fall behind. It was already locked in. We are going to the Townsville Entertainment and Convention Centre on May 11th. We're not filling the whole venue. We have half of the venue, and that's deliberate. The venue's 4,000 people, so our intention is not to sell 4,000 tickets, but I will if people want them. But we've got a good seating plan, and I feel like the seating plan that we've got is going to allow for good view no matter where you are. And I'm very excited. I served in Townsville for a little over 4 years, and I've got a lot of friends up there and gyms up there that are getting involved, and I'm pumped about it.
Will there be like an army section where if they wear their uniforms, there's like tickets?
There won't be an army section. There will be. I've already got some tables sold on base, and I'll be heading up there in the next few weeks to do some promotion across the base. and see how we go. But yeah, I would love to bring what I would consider Beatdown as a major organization, um, and we don't do things in halves, and the event will be the same as the Brisbane ones, but bigger. And so I would love to return to Townsville and bring that back up there after, all the good years that I got. I like Townsville. I nearly moved to Townsville before I started the gym. I almost moved back there. So I'm a massive fan of the city, and I feel like it makes a lot of sense for us to go back there. And we got some exciting fights. We got a pretty good main event.
I was going to say, is the whole card just going to be built around Jack James?
No, not the whole card. Only one fight. But we're working on some things. We're gonna have some away versus away matchups. I think that's probably the biggest trick for us in Townsville is it's not a big city and there's a bunch of jiu-jitsu gyms up there. There's only one MMA gym, and I think again, a lot of people coming from out of town for it. So we'll see how it goes. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, well, is the motivation just because you used to be there, you want to visit there? Like, what's the motivation for Townsville?
I don't know really. Just fucking like to do things that make me nervous, and you know, um, I just like the city. I just think it's cool. I fought up there. I fought there in 2012. I believe that was the last full MMA show that was up there. It was Brace. It was also at the entertainment center. It was a good night. It was stacked. Um, Obviously, one of my closest friends in Ian owned the gym up there. Jack's up there. Had a good win on the weekend. I mean, it wasn't really like, even if he lost, he probably still would have been on the card. But it's like it doesn't really. It's not about the fight. I just like Townsville. Townsville for me is a good city, and I felt like, again, it's kind of like North Brisbane, right? I kind of feel like there's a hole in the market. Like every major city has an MMA promotion. There's 200,000 people in Townsville. Why should Townsville not have an MMA promotion?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The hole in the market, surely. I don't know. We'll find out in 8 weeks. There might be a hole in the entertainment centre.
So only holes in the market? You're not going to markets that might already be patched up?
I'm no one's competitor. I'm here to grow the sport, provide opportunities for athletes, and a good night's out for fans, and that's it. And like I said, if anyone else has a successful show, the clap for them as loud as anyone that's close to them. So it doesn't really worry me. I'm not going to the fucking Gold Coast. I can tell you that.
No Southport Sharks shows coming up?
No Southport Shark shows. No fucking HBF stadiums. No pavilions. No festival halls. None of that shit. And you can keep Sydney as well, because fuck the New South Wales Commission. I'm not going anywhere near that.
Yeah.
No, I think that there's been good MMA shows in Mackay, Gladstone, Rockhampton, and Townsville, but nothing consistent. I'm not saying I'm going to the others, but they're the ones. There's been shows at all of those, and they tend to sell out like 800 to 1,000 people at every single one of them. So I can't see why those cities don't deserve or wouldn't work as an opportunity to take MMA. Look, like Eternal's way bigger than us, man. Like HBF Stadium if they're selling 3,600 tickets, fucking good on them. Like, I think that's amazing, but I'm not promoting full time. I'm like part time at this stuff. It's just, I do a couple hours a day. I run my gyms, and so I don't, I'll never hold anything back in business, but I don't plan on promoting full time. That's not something that's in the plans. But if it takes me there.
You personally might not do it, but you're a smart man. You might offload it to someone else.
I've been known to delegate workload before.
Well,
but no, I don't know. I think Townsville's a good spot. Um, there's combat sports events up there all the time, but there's just no MMA, and I just we'll see how it goes.
Before I let you go, anything else that anyone needs to know about what's coming up, or a bit more information on Townsville tickets or anything like that?
Townsville tickets will go on sale this Friday,
Oof, love it.
and the main event will be announced when Friday night. Is that right? Is that right? Friday
Give me,
night.
give me a hint.
How much more of a hint do you want? I'll tell you what. Why don't you put a poll up? All right. If Townsville was to have a main event, who would fight Jack James?
Okay, I'll see.
All right.
I'll see what happens.
I'll give 2 free tickets to anyone that gets it,
Okay. Okay.
as long as they're not from that gym.
Okay. Sounds good. Damien Brown,
All right.
always a pleasure. I will chat to you another time, and if I can find tickets to Townsville, I'll see you up there.
So the tickets to Townsville will be at tickettech/TSV box office. Check it out. May 11th, Townsville Entertainment Convention Center. Thanks, mate.